Well, hello everybody and welcome back to Digital++. This is my multiplayer VR project that I started about 2 years ago. It's currently running on Unity 2022.3. It's a vendor-agnostic multiplayer VR project, which means it uses OpenXR. It also has some AI capabilities and therefore it leverages LLaMa. Unity recently released Unity 6, and as to be expected, most of the project now no longer works. So I thought it would be a good idea to share with you my adventures on how to get my project back up and running on Unity 6, and maybe that helps you convert your own project. So please note this is not a coding tutorial. I'm going to show you the changes that Unity 6 has in relation to Unity 2022. I will show you the issues that I run into, all the differences, and anything else that may be useful for your upgrading your project. So let's roll up our sleeves and get into the weeds. Before we start, please note you can pull my complete project from my GitHub page. The address is located over there. It's github.com/digital++/bamconstruct. Take the default smart NPC branch, and I also added you a nice multiplayer tennis game that you can try out. Please note that you can get this game by cloning the slam the ball branch. But be careful with your hands, because you can easily slam your hands against the wall and or the table, because that happened to me as well. Okay, first of all, let's download and install the new Unity editor. I'm assuming you already have Unity installed. So let's open up Unity Hub. You go to Installs and you click Install Editor. Now I already installed Unity 6 version 23 F1. If you install editor, you see that there's already a newer version available, but I'm not going to install that here now. All right, let's go back to the projects. So the most logical next step would be take your Unity 2022.3 project and upgrade it. You click on the editor version field here and you switch to Unity 6 and then open with Unity 6. I'm not going to do that here. And so I tried to upgrade my project in the traditional way, but I really never got it to work. Just a few examples. Every single material in our old project was using the standard shader in the URP pipeline. Now in Unity 6, that has now changed. It's called Universal Render Pipeline /lit shader. So that means that every single material in the project needs to be changed and reconfigured. That's not even that bad yet. More important, the foundation of the OpenXR project is always the XR origin. And that has significantly changed in Unity 6. In Unity 2022, you see here that our controllers, for example, have a direct interactor and a ray interactor. Also, we get the controller button information from the action-based controller components. So these are all either deprecated in Unity 6 or significantly changed. And that goes for your left controller, your right controller, left hand and right hand, right? So let's have a look how that looks then in Unity 6. The left controller now no longer has a ray interactor or a direct interactor, although the ray interactor still exists, but it's not configured. There's a new near-far interactor. And it took me quite some time to figure out how that exactly worked. But it's a combination of the ray interactor and the direct interactor. Also, the action-based controller components are no longer there. So we needed to find another way to get the information from our controllers. When do I pull the trigger button? When do I pull the activate button? Now in my project under Unity 22, let's go back to that, I used the XR origin prefab from the hands interaction demo. Now unfortunately, Unity has decided to completely change that prefab. This prefab here that came from Unity 2022, when trying to import that into Unity 6, it completely breaks the whole XR origin and literally nothing works anymore. Because Unity has no backward compatibility policy whatsoever when it comes to prefabs and the samples that they provide with their packages. Even crazier, I think, is that by default, there is no XR origin prefab that also has hands control. That is always somehow packaged in the samples and it changes with every single patch and update that you get. So I really do not understand why Unity does not provide a stable OpenXR controller and hands prefab that doesn't really have these massive changes all the time. Alright, so I then decided to start with a complete new project. The reason behind that is because with a new project you could at least expect that everything is set up properly for Unity 6. So in our Unity Hub, let's go to New Project and we can select VR Core. Please note that there's also a VR multiplayer. I haven't tried that out, but this is again a sample. This is not a core project, so I'd rather stay away from that and just use one of the core templates that's available. So we can create that and then it'll just create a project for you. Once that installation is done, you get the following screen. So it says a welcome to the VR template projects and will ask you to go to the XR plugin management under project settings. So we'll go into that in a little bit. Just make sure that you check again in the Unity Hub whether or not the Visual Studio community, the Windows build support and the Android platform support, including the OpenJDK and SDK and NDK tools. Note that to be able to build applications for the Windows platform, I had to manually install the Microsoft Windows SDK. That's basically the Windows compiler. So that's something that didn't go automatically with the installation of Unity 6. So let's close this. Let's look at a few differences that we immediately see. So here is Unity 2022 and here is Unity 6. So you see that the background is a little bit darker. Also, the file menu is a little bit different. Under Unity 2022, we were used to go to File, Build Settings, and then do a build and run or build or configure your platform. Now in Unity 6, that looks a little bit different. We go to File, now we have Build Profiles. You still have to build and run and build, but then your profiles are here. So you have the Android build profile and the Windows build profile. Another interesting change is under Unity 2022, unless you are an enterprise user, you couldn't remove the splash screen, right? So if you're a free user like myself, then you couldn't remove that. In Unity 6, you can actually now enable and disable that. So you could decide to show the splash screen and make some changes there. So now the next thing we need to do is to configure OpenXR. So we go to Edit, Project Settings, and then you have our XR plugin management. And so that hasn't significantly changed. You still have the Windows tab here, and you have the Android tab here. So let's go to the Android tab first, because that's the most important. You already see an exclamation mark that there are some incompatible settings. Now the first thing we need to do is go to the OpenXR tab and we need to add some interaction profiles. And we need to add the hand interaction profile. Also we need to add the MetaQuest Touch Plus controller profile. And I also added the Microsoft Hand interaction profile. In the OpenXR feature groups, we need to have the hand interaction poses, and I think that is about it. Cool. The XR interaction toolkit, I don't think we have to add anything there. Okay, then after a while, imports everything again, and hopefully then the error messages should be gone. Cool. So do another product validation, and see there's no more errors at the moment. Cool. So that is now fixed. Perfect. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go to Window Package Manager. Let's wait until a refreshing list is ready. And we see that the XR Interaction Toolkit is installed, but we want to have some samples. So let's get the hand interaction demo. So let's import that. Then the next thing we need to have is the XR Hands Toolkit. So let it import again. So it automatically complains that if you have this XR Hands interaction demo, you need to have the XR Hands Toolkit. So let's click on Fix. It now still wants a sample from the XR Hands. Right, because the XR Hands package still also has samples. So let's click Fix here as well, and it should then install the XR Hands sample. All right, so now it looks like, let's do a configuration check. Under project validation, there's no more risks, not under Windows nor under Android. Awesome, we have our OpenXR setup completed. So the next thing we want to do is we want to stop the editor and copy paste all my scripts into the new project, all the resources, all the prefabs, all the animations, all the materials, etc., etc. And then we'll start the project again, keep our fingers in our ears and see what happens. So let's go create folder. We need a scripts folder, animations, prefabs, resources, materials. And I think for now that should be good. So let's stop our editor and start copy pasting our project resources. All right, so we have opened our Unity project folder on Windows, and so Unity I have 22.3, and then the project name is BAM Construct, Let's go into our assets folder, and here we see all the content. So what I'm now going to do is copy paste all the content of the animations into the animations folder. And I'm going to do the same for the materials. I'm going to copy the prefabs. So let's go to the prefabs folder here. Copy that over. The resources. Okay. And then the scenes. Yep, replace it. Then we need to have the scripts. Very important folder. Okay, so we also need to have the ulipsync package, and so let's go back to the main folder. In my project on GitHub, there is the ulipsync package. You will find the Pico SDK and the ulipsync package. So let's copy paste the ulipsync package into the project folder as well. We can import that in the next step. All right, that is done. And so now let's close all this and let's see what Unity does if we start up the project. Let's go to the Unity Hub and we start my project. And now let's keep the fingers crossed and see how many errors we get. Okay, rather quickly you get a message here that some of these sources refers to an API that has changed. Do you want these files to be updated? I tried that. Be my guest, try it out, but I'm going to say no for now, and because in my experience that just didn't work at all, and then it starts making changes to your scripts and you may not want to have that. So enter save mode. No, we want to just ignore the errors, and let's go ahead. And then you can grab a cup of coffee because it is going to import the project and do a lot of work it needs to do to unpack all these components and to import them, etc. Okay, so now you immediately see after the editor is started that there are some things broken. So one thing is that the plane that we had is all pink. That's usually an indication that there's something wrong with the material, and I know there's a whole slew of errors. We'll have to go and try to fix some things. So let's start with that now first. The plane material has a shader standard, so we now need to tick the universal render pipeline and the lit shader, and now it works. Unfortunately, the surface inputs, in particular the base map, have all changed. So let's turn this into the right gray, and so we have the right gray again. Awesome. So the plane has now been fixed. Now, the first thing we need to do, as unfortunate as it sounds, is we need to just remove our complete XR interaction hands setup, because that has gone completely useless. And I'm going into the hands interaction demo folder. Under prefabs, there is the XR origin hands. Let's try that one. So we'll drag drop that into our scene. Let's open that. We have locomotion like we had before, and we now have left controller, right controller, left hand, right hand. So that's the one we need. I'm going to change the name into XR origin XR Rake, because that is the same name that we have used in our Unity 2022. And that's important because in a number of places in my scripts, I'm using a GameObject.find of the XR origin. So I don't want to make changes to all these scripts. So let's just rename that to the XR origin XR Rake. I think we need to have the ulipsync package. And so the ulipsync package we import in a bit of a different way. We go to assets, import package, custom package, and we drag drop the package into our project. So you find it here. Let's open it and we do an import. In case you didn't know, the ulipsync package is a package that we use for NPC. Let's first go to the Unity registry and let's find authentication. We need authentication in the Vivox package, because for Vivox we need to make sure that you get authentication to use the microphone and the speaker. Let's give that some time to run and install. We also need to install the Vivox package because we have voice services that we want to use. Yep, let's install that. Okay, so Vivox is now done. And the last thing we need is the in-game debug console. For that you need to go to your assets, the assets that you purchased on Unity. And the in-game debug console is available there. You can import that into your project. So now we have all the packages installed and we should be good to go to the next step. Let's first try to clear the error messages. So we see a lot of errors here. Let's first start with these. A lot of errors point to the fact that it doesn't know what netcode is. All right, so that apparently we're missing the netcode for GameObjects package. So let's go to Package Manager, and yeah, we're not seeing any netcode for GameObjects. So let's go into the Unity registry and type in netcode for GameObjects version 2.0.0. Let's install it as well. Okay, that's now installed. Let's do a clear of the error messages. All right, so now we see much less errors. The rigging doesn't exist. Okay, so we need to have the rigging package. So let's go again to the package manager. Let's search for animation rigging. Let's install that. Okay. So now there's a bunch of new errors. Let's have a look. So the action-based controller is obsolete. You know, I mentioned to you at the beginning that as per Unity 6, the action-based controllers have been deprecated. And so we'll need to build something ourselves. So we'll go to that in a bit. XR Direct Interactor could not be found, correct, because that doesn't exist anymore. So that's all known. Action-based controllers, continuous move and turn providers. Okay, so the VFox Voice Manager as error that we got. Let's have a look where that came from. Let's go to Windows, Package Manager. And we do know we have VFox installed, right? And that's here. And I think we need to have some samples. Let's do the channel sample, because that has a VFox Voice Manager, so let's install those samples here as well. Alright, so the VFox Voice Manager error is now gone, and all the errors that we now have remaining are the action-based controllers and the turn provider. So that all has to do with the XR origin, and these are all in my old scripts, so I'm going to need to fix those. So we'll have a look at that later. And so let's have a look on reconstructing and reconfiguring our components and our objects. So we made so many changes now with all these packages. I suggest let's just shut down the editor and restart it again, shall we? Let's save it and let's restart it again, see where we are. Alright, so immediately we get a project validation issue on OpenXR. It needs to import the starter assets from the XR interaction toolkits. Alright, so let's fix that. OpenXR, we have the hand interaction poses, so we need to add the hand tracking subsystem and the meta hand tracking aim on the Android tab. On the Windows tab, we need to add the same, so hand interaction poses, hand tracking subsystem, meta hand tracking aim. So those three we need to have. So it wants to have the starter assets from the XR interaction toolkit. So it wants to have the starter assets and the hand interaction demo. So let's do a hand interaction demo update, because apparently there's a new one, and the starter assets, let's do a re-import just to be sure. I think we just need to restart the editor, see how that works. Restarting the editor again. So it has now been started. Let's go to edit, project settings, and if you look under project validation, there are no more warnings, so everything is now working. Awesome. You will have to restart the editor a couple of times because there are some sticky error messages that you just can't get rid of. We were now going to look at our objects, so let's go back to our resources folder and, for example, open the male human object. So let's double click that. Let's see if we can remove that error message and comment it out. We'll have to come back to that in a bit, and let's see if we can get the system to load the scripts again in a proper way. Alright, that looks much better. First thing we want to now look at is the colors, obviously. So let's go to the Genesis 9 shape model here, and you see that all of the colors are broken. So I'm not going through all of the details here, but I'm going to show you how you can fix this. The shader is broken, so you need to use the universal render pipeline lit. The only problem now is that we do not have the right base map set, so we now need to select that again, and I think the best way to do it is go into prefabs, avatars, the G9M, mescaline body, so we drag drop that onto the base map there. So that is now done. We need to have the arms and the universal render pipeline. We change that to lit, so we now drag drop the arms onto the base map. You need to make some changes to the smoothness here because it makes it automatically very smooth, and I don't like that. The normal map is good, so that's fine. We can do the same with the leg. We will need to have the head. Well, we're still not there, right? We're still not out of the woodwork. Let's go to the eyes. The eyes has 4 colors. Now let's open up the eye right and the left. So for the eyes, I need to have the eye color. You could decide to leave the smoothness in there because it's not too bad that the eyes are a little bit smooth. There's also eye moisture. Its base map is white, and we click on the color here, and then we set the transparency slider all the way to 0. What we also need to do is make the surface transparent, and now you see the eye appear here on this side. Let's do the same for the eye moisture on the left. And there we go, our eyes are visible. So we can do the same for the eyelashes and everything, so I'm not going to bore you with all of that. And then unfortunately you need to do that for all the avatars, so you need to do it for the male human, the female human, the male bot, and the female bot. Now we also have the table, same problem that we use as a spawner, and we have our grabbable cube, which we also use. These were the red cubes that we've seen. So for all of these you need to change the materials back. It's a little bit of boring work, but unfortunately that is what we need to do. So once you've got all of that fixed, you should be having a good set of objects again from a material point of view. Alright, so let's have a quick look. The canvas, that looks really good. The launch UI looks really good. The in-game debug console looks good, so that's fine. The network manager, that's all fine. The problem we have here is that there's a script missing. And so what is missing is a connection notification manager. So I need to copy that over from the old project files. So here we are under the BAM construct, Unity 2022. There is a connection notification manager. So I need to copy that into my assets folder of the Unity 6 project. I want this now under scripts network. So let's move it there. So I drag drop it in that folder. Yeah, and when we do a refresh, we see that the connection notification manager script is now visible again. Great. Okay. Let's look at the VFox Voice Manager. Server repository is all good. We are now doing a protocol debug and the XR origin is here. Great. Okay. So let's select the XR origin, and so you will immediately see that there are a whole bunch of components. The only thing we want to change there is the tracking origin mode, and that will be floor. We want to add our own component called the XRGrab event handler. That's a script that we will need to make sure that the events that we do when we grab something in first person mode are being sent over the network. Let's go to the camera offset to our left and our right controller. We want to move with our left controller but turn with our right controller, and go to the right controller, and then we click smooth turn enabled, and with that we are smoothly turning around. So maybe we can try that out. Alright, let's press the play button. Okay. Yeah, so we can turn around. We turn around smoothly. Awesome. We see our menu there. We see that our rays are not working yet, and we can move forwards, we can move backwards, on the side, and rotate. Alright, so now let's move to the hands mode, and you see our hands are working, and again the rays are not working yet. Okay, so we need to go into our left controller and our right controller, and for each of those we need to have the near far interactors. We need to have the same for the right hand and the left hand. So select all of these near far interactors at once, so we don't need to make these changes 4 times. And then we need to open the curve casting settings, and then we need to go to cast distance. We need to increase that to, let's say, 80. Let's quickly try this out. So here we go. You see we now have our ray interactors. They behave a little bit differently than the ray interactors that we had before. We can now point at male, female, and human bot, so the menu is working. We can check boxes. I would say that the interactors are working fine, and yeah, we can even use our hands to connect and click on the host button, on the client button, etc. So this is all working again. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is that we want to be able to grab objects with our hands and with our controllers. So let's first go to our left hand and our left controller. Let's both select the near far interactor, and under the near far interactor component, open up the interactor events. We go to select entered, we do a plus, and we do the same for select exited. And what we do there is that we drag drop the XR origin into those fields. So now go to function. You see the XRGrab event handler is here, and we now want to say the select left grab enter event controller. And now we do the same with the exit event controller. So we go to the XRGrab event handler and we do the select right grab exit event controller. So what we've now done is that on our left controller and our left hand, if we grab something, that will mean that these event handlers will be called. And those are parts of a script that we migrated from Unity 2022 to Unity 6. Let's do the same with the right hand and the right controller. We do XRGrab event handler. We now take the select right grab enter, and we now take here the select right exit. Okay, so let's now go on to the next step, because we now need to start addressing that we need to be able to read our controller buttons. The action-based controllers are no longer there. So I promise you this wasn't going to be a detailed coding tutorial. What I've done, I've fast forwarded a little bit, and I'm actually now working from my completed project, which is fully running. So we need a way to identify which buttons on the XR controllers are used. I added a new script myself. We add that to the XR origin, and that's called controller button reader. And so let's open up and see what that does. We identify a number of serialized fields, so we can identify a number of button reader components, an XR input button reader, and that's a new component that we have in Unity 6. So the left controller select is the XRI left interaction select buttons, right? So if you click on this, you get a list of all of the XRI input actions. And then on the second line, we add the XRI left interaction select value. And then we drag drop that here. We do the same for the right controller select. We do the same for the left controller activate and for the right controller activate. Now you also see here a threshold and a debug. Now debug is obvious, and the threshold is a value that you set somewhere between 0 and 1, after which the system decides, well, yeah, the button is selected or not. So these are the settings here, the threshold and the debug. We define a couple of public access methods to retrieve whether or not the button is pressed. It really just returns your left controller select, and it does a read value. And if that's bigger than the threshold, it returns a true. The same for the right controller select. Do the same for the left controller activate and the right controller activate. If there's debug is turned on, we are going to debug what these select and activate buttons are doing, and then you can play around with the threshold values a little bit to see which, for your headset, which threshold value works. So what we can now do is, anywhere in the program, we can open the XR origin, get the controller button reader script, and then call any of these public access methods to see what the value of your left controller, your right controller, etc., your buttons are. With that, I thought it would be a good idea to have the ability to hide and unhide the menu or the user interface. And what we could do, for example, is if we take our left controller and we push both the select and the activate button, that would hide. And if you do it again, it would unhide. So it's like a toggle. So I've built that into the launch UI script. So let's open that and see how we've done that. I have a controller button reader, right? So we need to obviously get the value of our buttons. I also have a serialized field here, which is the debounce time. You need to debounce your keys, otherwise your menu will flicker, and I'll show you that in a bit. Also, there's a variable, it's called isVisible. There's like a toggle menu visibility. In the update function, we check if the left controller button activate is pressed and the left controller select button is pressed, and we're outside of the debounce time, so we've significantly long pressed the button, then we'll do a toggle menu visibility. The only thing that toggle menu visibility does is it inverts a private variable called isVisible, and then it turns on or off the UI. Alright, so let's quickly see how that works. Please note that I have set the debounce time to about half a second. I'm first going to click the host button. I click my left and right controller select and activate button, and the menu disappears. I click it again and the menu appears again. Now let's see what happens if I have a debounce time of 0. So I'm going to click the buttons again. You see that it's very unstable and it flickers. Alright, that is the menu. Alright, so this is a big piece of work that has now massively changed because of the fact we are no longer using the action-based controllers, right? So we want to be able to grab our objects again. So let's look at our resources and go to our grabbable cube. Here I fixed the materials again in the way we did before, so that is all done. Let's go over these settings set by set. So we have our box collider, that's fine. Let's make sure the is trigger is off. We want to make sure that we put everything that we want to grab in our layer grabbables, and the layer overrides we can, under include layers, add grabbables as well. Then our rigid body, we want to make sure that we use gravity and we turn off is kinematic. So the network rigid body has a couple of new settings that we didn't have before. This one is important, auto update kinematic states, and I've turned that off. So what that does is as soon as you grab a network object as a network rigid body, it will automatically set its state to kinematic to avoid that the object will start bouncing around against any of your colliders. Then the network object, we can leave everything as is, nothing very different. The XRGrabEnabler, that's something we need to add here. Make sure that we add a collider here. You drag drop the box collider here into that field. This is interesting here now, by the way. This is completely new and we didn't have that in Unity 2022. Select mode is multiple. It's a situation where you can select the object with not only one but also two controllers or two hands. And that gives you the ability to resize the object, which is quite cool. And we'll have to make a few changes to our script to be able to use that, but I've done that and it's quite an interesting, cool new feature. The interactable events, let's have a look there. We will not do that here because if you remember, the grab events we already registered on the left and the right controllers and hands, and so we don't want to do that on the grabbable itself. There's a client network transform. Now under Unity 6 that's no longer needed. So you can just add a network transform and then select either server or owner. Because you now have the ability to resize your grabbable object, I also enabled the XYZ scaling here. So now you could scale this thing. We still need to do one more step because it's still not automatically scaling, right? We're only telling the grabbable object that the scaling will be synchronized across the network. We still need to tell the server that the object needs to be scaled. So we'll do that in a bit. You see another thing here is called XRGrabEnabler. That's something I created myself. It's a very simple class which only consists of one public bool, and with this you can explicitly tell it to not grab it. Sorry, there's one more thing I forgot here. So let's go back to the XRGrab interactable. Use dynamic attach. So this now allows you to dynamically grab a grabbable object anywhere you want. Usually you had to define a attach point, but you can now with this setting make sure that you can grab the grabbable object anywhere you want. So let's quickly show that here. So first of all, let's try that with our cube. Right? So I can grab it in the middle of the cube. I can grab it now more at the end of the cube. I can grab it literally everywhere I want. And now, for example, these are, let's assume this is a baseball bat here. So you can grab this here. So you can say, I'd like to grab it here, or maybe grab it more at the end, and then, slam a ball around or something like that. There's also another component called the XR General Grab Transformer. You now have the ability to have allow one-hand and two-handed scaling. So I turned that on, and that would then allow you to scale the grabbed object. So if you remember in our previous videos, we implemented two ways to grab an object. First of all, as a first-person view, and there's also a third-person view, and that grab is quite different. On the XR origin, we created an XRGrab event handler script. What that does, it registers the select enter and the select exit event controller events. On the avatars, let's say the male human, there is a grabbed object controller script that sends the information of the grabbed object to the server and requests changes like set its kinematic state, etc., etc. So let's quickly have a look at the changes in the grabbed object controller. So in the update function, what it does, if the third person toggle is off, that means you're in first person mode, and then it's going to check if you grab something with your left hand, it's going to tell the server to move that object to that position. And that's something you explicitly have to do, right? In a network environment. When you grab something, the grabbed object will collide with the collider of the controller or the hands. And so the object will want to start doing physics and it starts to bounce around your hand. That's really weird. So the best thing is then to set it kinematic. What I've changed in this code is that instead of that, I'm telling the server that you now should start taking ownership. The great news is as well is that because this is the case, you can now also throw the object away in a network space. As you're the owner, you're also allowed to give the object a velocity at the moment that you detach it, okay, right? Because you own the object and you tell the server where it needs to go. All right, so I told about that we want to do scaling with two hands. So in the previous version of Unity, we only set the position and the rotation, but I'm now tell the server, oh dear server, scale the object to the size that I'm now indicating with my hands. So we're going to have to tell the server to take ownership of the grabbable object. We do that in this function, and what we do is we try to get the network object out of the RPC call. The server then actually see who's the new owner. It tries to change the ownership to the new owner. Great, let's see how that grabbing works and see if we can actually scale now. So I am now connected on my headset. Let's click the host button. All right. So here we go. Let's grab this cube. Let's grab it with the other hand and let's move these apart. And you see now the object is scaling, right? I can grab it anywhere. I could make it a bit bigger even and put it on the table again. Do the same for this. Awesome. Let's put the controllers on the table and let's grab it with our hands. And again, we can do the same here with two hands. Right, so that's the first person grab. Now there's also a third person grab that we created. Open the male human game object. The grabbing components are connected to our IK target, and each of them have a attach point. That's at the tip of the fingers. It also has the AvatarXRGrabber script. Alright, so we can no longer use the action-based controllers to read which buttons are set, and we just created a new controller button reader component for it. So let's create a link there. Under start, we're going to find the XR origin XRig, and we know we gave that the component controller button reader, so let's get a link to that there. The way the third person grab works is that we use collisions. The left arm IK target has a box collider, and that is set as trigger. So that means that as soon as it hits a grabbed object, there's a collision and the onTrigger stay function will be called. So we then pull from our left and our right hand whether or not the select button was pressed, right? That's your trigger finger. When that's the case, you grab something and now tell the server to move it to the position of your hand. And that's basically how the third person grab works. Okay, so let's try this out. So let me start as a host again. I'm going to start in third person mode and let me grab the object, and there you go. Let me go to hand mode. Let's grab it. There you go. So with grabbing, and so the cube is now following my hand until I release the pinch and then it drops it again. Alright, so I still had to explain why there is an XRGrabEnabler component with only a variable called XRGrabEnabled. Let's see what happens with our NPC. Alright, so I'm going to talk to the NPC now. Hello. So now you see that it's taking the NPC and it's grabbing it. You see that is not something that we want, right? So we need to find a way to be able to stop the ability to grab the NPC object. Under Unity 6, unfortunately, the new near-far interactor just grabs the object. So with this variable, let's turn this now off, and you will see that I now will not be able to grab that NPC anymore. Moving over to the NPC, I now can talk to it and move my controller around, but it'll stay in its place. And how does that work then? In the XRGrab event handler script, every time we grab something, it first checks the grab object if it has a component called XRGrabEnabler. If that is available, it checks whether or not that XRGrabEnabled variable is set. If that is not set, it's basically going to ignore the grab request and not tell the server to move the object. With this additional variable, we basically have the ability to filter off these grab events. So that is how it works. So the last thing we now want to do is test a couple of things out in multiplayer mode. So I'm going to load the application into my Quest 2. I also have Oculus Quest 3, I have a Pico 4. I'm going to test it on my laptop as the host and then my VR system as a client, and then test out a couple of things. Also going to try the voice services. Okay, so please note that the first thing I will do, I will start as a host and I'll make sure that I join the voice services, and then I'll turn off my headset, otherwise we get a horrible echo. Join as a host. So you see here is my host avatar. And here is my NPC, so we can use that in a bit. And I'm going to join as a remote client. So let me turn off my audio. Alright, so if all is well, you should see me here now in front of the camera. This is me with my controllers. I'm grabbing a tennis racket, right, moving it around. I switch to my fingers and I move my hands, my fingers. Second. Yeah. So thumbs up. Index finger up, fingers moving around, awesome, so that should be working. Alright, let's grab something. So I now grab as a client this cube, and you should be able to see that I can throw it away, right? And that was not possible in the earlier version. So let's throw this side, cool. As a client, I'm now going to make this cube larger, so let's make this bigger. Throw it on the ground. Awesome. And I think I can even stand on top of it if I wanted to, but okay. So that all seems to work. Great. All right. So the one thing we need to show is, if you hear me well, you can also hear that I'm now speaking over the voice channel. So on the Vivox services, you can now hear my audio going over the network as well. So that has now been tested and is also working. Cool. And so the last thing we want to test is to see whether our NPC is working and we can have a conversation with it. So let's ask it a question. Hello, how are you?
I am doing well, thank you. It's nice to chat with you.
So what you will notice with the NPC is that its eyes will follow you around. So if I move to the right, you see the NPC will move its eyes, and if I go to the left, at least on my left, you will see it's also moving. I can go up a little bit, and its eyes will go look up again and down, and that all works independent of the rotation of the NPC. So let's rotate the NPC 90 degrees. Let's rotate it in that direction. Right, so now it's rotated, and now let me move again, and you will see that it will again follow me with its eyes. Well, can you say bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
And that rolls up this video on upgrading my VR project to Unity 6. Well, upgrading is kind of a weird statement because I basically had to start from a complete new project and import all my objects and scripts again and reconfigure them and fix a whole bunch of issues, mostly because of the major changes in the XR origin object. All of that's now fixed. The project's all up and running, except for the Pico support. ByteDance still does not provide the right drivers for Unity 6 yet, so we'll have to wait a little for that. But when that's done, we should be mostly good to go. This project obviously is available for free. You can download it from my GitHub at github.com/digital++. Download the Smart NPC branch or the Slam the Ball branch. They're technically the same, but one gives you immediate access to playing this minigame. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think and speak to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.